Regardless of how they receive instruction, students learn science best when they are trying to figure out something they find intriguing. We use observable real-world events that we call phenomena to drive students to investigate like scientists. During virtual instruction, 4th grade students were introduced to phenomena by watching videos like the one pictured here. Students saw balloons rubbed with fur and then kind of mysteriously move apart. Then they used tools like Jamboard to record the questions they wanted to investigate further. After asking questions, students got to use a simulator to investigate what happens by rubbing balloons on the wool sweater. When they are available, simulators like this one are great tools because they allow students to investigate and answer questions like scientists. Science curriculum is designed to prioritize student exploration and explanation of phenomena, like what happens with balloons. For virtual instruction, we adapted our instructional model and provided modified scope and sequences so students could work at home without science equipment. Teachers have been doing demonstrations, showing videos, and using simulations to engage students with phenomena. Students try to make sense of the phenomena and work with their classmates to develop a model that explains all the evidence. This is what virtual instruction looks like. I took this picture in November when I visited Miss Wallace's 4th grade class at Johnston Square. Students were using a simulator with batteries, bulbs, and wires, trying to figure out how to use electricity to make the light bulb light up. If you look in the chat, you can see evidence of a student experiencing the joy of discovery. If anyone can't see it, it says, "I did something so cool." And that was right after a student figured out how to light the light bulb up. This is what virtual instruction should look like. Now that we have some students back in the classroom, the pattern is the same, but they can do hands-on activities again. So a principal sent me this picture. This is 1st graders at Johnston Square studying sound using rubber bands and cardboard boxes to try to create vibrations in homemade instruments. Simulators are cool. This is better. As teachers have been working to master virtual and hybrid instruction, they've needed all the resources they can get. And I'd like to highlight some of the resources we were able to provide. North Bay Adventures made free videos of experiments from Sabes, our elementary science curriculum. They have their own YouTube channel with that. Activate Learning, the publisher of iQuest, our middle school science program, provided free access to the digital edition. Vernier, who provides us with probeware, provided our high school students with free access to their video analysis software. We purchased the K-8 science materials for the curriculum for schools eligible for concentrations of poverty grants. We also paid for virtual resources from Discovery Education, and they integrated them into our elementary and high school scope and sequences. So besides resources, teachers also need all the support they can get. Professional learning highlights from this year include multi-day summer workshop series, virtual professional learning conferences on systemic professional learning days, online training videos, office hours, and monthly teacher roundtables. We also ask teachers to reflect on their professional learning. This is how Pearl Fletcher, an elementary teacher from Wildwood Elementary, responded after attending a workshop on the virtual resources from Discovery Education. I'll just play that for you real quick.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I'm feeling energized again, instead of being overwhelmed by virtual learning and trying to fit in what we do in the building and trying to fit it into virtual. It's awesome. It's awesome.
As you know, teachers have had to reinvent their entire teaching toolkit, and virtual learning hasn't been all excitement and the joy of discovery. Getting students to participate in meaningful small group discussions about phenomena isn't easy, particularly when students can't interact with materials or a simulation isn't available. Efforts to reduce screen time for elementary students have also led to elementary grades losing as much as 60% of the time needed to complete the curriculum. Secondary attendance and participation have also been low. Many of these challenges will improve as we continue to transition back to in-person learning, but there will be deficits that we have to address. It's hard to quantify the impact on students since there isn't any state science achievement data to compare for last year or this year. The achievement data we have for science is from the first semester interims, and this is the first time we've been able to get this kind of analysis. This shows the Q1 and the Q2 interims. The middle school average was 44% complete and 42% correct. The high school average was 19% complete and 43% correct. However, you look at the graph, you can see that implementation was varied widely from school to school and network to network. I'd like to point out one school, Thomas Johnson, led the district with 88% complete and 78% correct. One CLN, CLN3, averaged 67% complete and 47% correct. The low completion rates tell us that more attention needs to be paid to science. The low performance rates tell us that our schools and teachers, particularly high schools, need more support with implementation of the curriculum and associated assessments. We have also been collaborating with the Office of Achievement and Accountability and the school's office to improve communications and provide reminders, data, and associated professional development. In fact, we have a workshop scheduled for tomorrow to help science teachers analyze the results from the Q3 unit assessments. In our work, we are focusing on 3 key impact points we identified to help drive the data. And those points are curriculum, supporting school leaders who support science in school buildings, and collaborative planning. So the next generation science standards expects instruction to be driven by students exploring phenomena. Since we already have iQuest, a phenomena-based curriculum for middle schools, we are focused on developing phenomena-driven curriculum units for elementary and high school as a focal point for professional learning and teacher development. However, the goal is to eventually replace our homegrown curricula with high-quality, NGSS-aligned curriculum as it becomes available. We are focusing on improving instruction now by working with a couple of lighthouse schools to develop best practices for using data as part of the collaborative planning process. For instance, that professional learning workshop we have tomorrow is informed by the work that we've done in our lighthouse schools. As part of the focus on improving instruction, we are also providing science coaching tools and professional learning for the school leaders who support science teachers and lead collaborative planning sessions at schools. For health education, we are also focusing on curriculum and teacher support and development. Our health and PE teachers particularly appreciated the virtual conferences and teacher roundtables with about 20+ teachers typically participating on Pay Fridays. Last year, we put out an RFP to identify high-quality K-8 health curriculum, but funding was impacted by the pandemic. The top priority is to replace our homegrown health curricula with high-quality health curricula for grades K-8. However, I should also note that the state has proposed changing the high school health credit from a half a credit to a full credit, starting with the class of 2025, and the measure is currently out for public comment. For physical education, we are also focusing on curriculum and teacher support and development. We used open resources and teacher input to develop K-8 curriculum maps that have been very well received. We finished developing the middle school curriculum maps this year and are on pace to address high school for the following year. Our biggest current challenge is making sure that all students have access to physical education during hybrid learning and preparing to help students master standards that cannot be taught at home, like learning to hit a ball with a bat or racket. That's striking an object with a long-handled implement. Like everyone else, we are excited by the transition back to in-person instruction, so all students will be able to develop their skills and master the standards. Now that you have been updated on the work of the science, health, and PE team, do you have any questions?
Mr. Is it Gabriels?
Gabriels.
Gabriels.
Well,
I have to say it a couple of times to make sure that I pronounce it correctly moving forward. I really appreciate this presentation. I want to open it up to the other commissioners that are present for questions or comments.
Thank you, Commissioner McFadden, and thank you, Mr. Gabriels, for your presentation. I have two questions, one of which is around literacy and writing and understanding that reading and writing, there's so much reading and writing that happens in science, and how we've been able to, going back a bit, one of the major platforms of the blueprint is literacy. And we talk about literacy, and we are, even in today's committee meeting, we're going to have a presentation on summer plans. But unless that help me to understand how we were able to focus in on reading and writing within the science curriculum during this period of hybrid learning.
So our science curricula at all levels includes opportunities for students to try to better understand phenomena, right? These real world observable events. And so when I visit a classroom, I can drop into a Zoom breakout room, right? And sometimes students are writing in Jamboards and they're presenting. So they're speaking, listening, reading, and writing. It's all about trying to look at the evidence, discuss it with their peers, build a model that they can explain. And so that's, sometimes they write, sometimes they read, we do it all, right? And if you look at the intersection of the standards, right, it's that argumentation from evidence where they're just hand in glove, they support each other. And actually the same thing is true with the math standards, right? There's argumentation from evidence there too. And the more students read and write and think, right, this is the critical thinking like scientists, adjusting their thinking based on new evidence and input from the peers, the better. Actually, when we were first piloting our middle school science curriculum, one of the schools that was piloting it, I was there to help with a equipment issue, and the middle school ELA teacher found me in the hallway talking to the science teacher and said, "Hey, I've noticed an improvement in my students' writing." And that's because we do claims evidence reasoning essays over and over and over again in our middle school curriculum. We do it in high school too. And we have that same kind of thinking in elementary. So they fit together, and that's not unique to virtual instruction. That is always and forever. Did that address your question?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't hear now.
Because I was muted. So understanding that science is essential to so many important social and political issues, could you speak to, since we're in the middle of a pandemic and there's been so many things that have come to light over the last year and a half while we've been home in this virtual space, have we been able to incorporate any of those social political issues within the science curriculum for our students so that it's relevant, that it's recent, and that they are engaged in that way?
So I can mention some work that we're doing in partnership with Johns Hopkins right now. So they have a education and training core that they call it HEAT core, and they've developed lessons about COVID for our students. And the lessons are cool because students get scientifically accurate information from experts. But what I like about it best is that our schools are signing up to have these presentations, and students can ask their own questions, right? They don't get pigeonholed into this is the information you need. The schools get to pick when they schedule it, they get to pick which topic is presented, but a huge chunk of the time is free for students to ask questions and to get answers from real experts. And so I think that's the best we've done during the pandemic. And I think that's, showcases why science education is so important. It helps make students make real decisions in their lives. Like they can understand why they should wear masks. I mean, I'm sitting there on the call, right, learning about, oh, you have this like SEAL test that you do if you're a lung doctor at Hopkins, right? And we could do something similar. It's all about how well it seals against our face. So, I find myself checking my kids' face masks like that, right? Like there's that moment of truth from an expert and students, and it all comes from student questions, right? That's how we empower our students, and that's what we're trying to do across the district.
That's wonderful. Thank you. One last question really quickly. What grade band is that curriculum for?
So we started it this fall. We tried it in high schools, 3 high schools first. And then right now it's happening in K through 12. So schools are signing up now. So we tried to get them all to sign up before spring break. So it's coming to a school near you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Can you hear me okay? I have my AirPods. Okay, great. One, I am a big fan of science. As a former engineer, like being a part of the science community and the STEM community, it's really important. And I'm going to date myself a little bit also. When I was in school and took the Maryland State Assessment back then, the MISPAC, we had a science portion that I felt like was really interactive and fun as a student. I'm curious to hear more about what assessment looks like for the sciences, even if you could talk about the different grade levels and the way we assess students' understanding of science subjects, and how we are making any kind of strides or accommodations or changes in the way that we assess students in science, including the way that they have been learning it. Because I heard you talk about a lot about experimentation, a lot about the way that they're able to explain and go through these discoveries. How has that been adapted into any of the assessments that we have, especially the ones you showcased in the data?
All right, so that's a big question, because assessment is present at all different levels in instruction. So I'm going to start sort of at the bottom and work my way up. So embedded into the curriculum, there are what we used to call labs, right? But we've blurred the lines between normal everyday instruction and labs, so kids are continuously investigating. And so there's these formative assessments. So you can use, and as a teacher, you can pick what speaks most to you. I particularly like those claims, evidence, reasoning essays, because students get to make a statement, they get to show the evidence, and then they get to articulate their reasoning. And I think that sums up, as well as anything does, a student's ability to act like a scientist, right? And so teachers are responding to that all the time. That's not something that's forced on them by the district. There's tools from the curriculum that they use, and they can build their own if they want. There's the ones that come with the curriculum. And then at the end of a unit, we have an interim assessment. So it's like a unit assessment, right? And all schools are supposed to complete those. And that's how everybody that's supporting the teacher and supporting schools can get an idea of like what's working, what's not working, do we need to make adjustments to the curriculum, et cetera. But there's also these themes that are the same from unit to unit. They're called practices. There's also cross-cutting concepts. And if students are struggling with something, like for instance, asking questions, in their small groups, they're not asking questions, and then they're not asking questions for them to look at and drive their instruction to find answers, the teacher can be like, okay, I need to work on this in the next unit, making sure I'm empowering my students to ask questions and that they can use the evidence to answer their own questions. So that's like the next level. And then after that, at the end of a whole grade band, the state provides assessments. And the state assessments are designed they're called item sets. So it's not just a whole bunch of multiple choice questions, which is what came after I can't pronounce it. MISPAC, there we go.
MISPAC,
like
yeah.
there was hands-on parts of that, right? That was logistically challenging, and it got done away with, and it got replaced by a multiple choice test with some open response questions, which then got removed because those were too hard to grade fairly. And now we have something entirely new, which is significantly better than that, but it does not have that hands-on component that you're looking for. And my personal hope is that over time, as simulations become more advanced and our technology improves, we'll be able to do some of that same kind of hands-on learning with the MISPAP with simulations. But that's a long-term view, and it's not anywhere on the horizon because of cost. And it would take large partnerships to make that happen. But what the state's done is these item sets, they have evidence that they present to students. It can be reading, it can be data, charts, graphs, etc. And then there's multiple choice questions which are designed to make kids think about it and show some practices, some concepts that cut between traditional scientific disciplines, and has open response. So it's all about understanding the evidence of that situation. So it starts with some multiple choice and then ends with, or more advanced stuff where they drag and drop, that kind of thing. And then they get to explain their thinking at the end. And so we've modeled our interim after that. Now, it's not possible for a teacher to grade only those in a reasonable amount of time. So we actually have a mixture of like the deepest multiple choice questions we can get, also helps students show some easy success, right, with some multiple choice questions. But then what I think is the most telling is those item sets that we put on every assessment that are modeled just after the state ones. It prepares the students for the state assessment, but it also gives teachers the best window into students' ability to function as scientists.
Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate your comprehensive answer. And you definitely did answer my question and also gave me what I was looking for along the way. Especially in thinking about what the state tests look like versus like what our students are experiencing in the classroom, and how like student learning will always show up in whatever test they're taking, as long as they're having like that experiential inquiry base, especially in science learning. The struggle I have is with differentiation for different types of students that learn and express their learning in different ways, and how we're able to accommodate those students in the way that we test them. But I'm happy to hear there's some supplementation with what we see from the state, and even understanding the students' progress throughout the year and not just based on that state standard test at the same time. The only other question I have for you is around curriculum, and it's more of just a statement, honestly, is thinking about since we've gone through this year, almost 2 years now, of COVID, and thinking about health and physical education, the inclusion of education around not just COVID and the science behind it, but also some of the emotional impacts within our health classes. I'm curious if you all have started to think and dig into that, or are thinking about including some spaces for that in the health curriculum for our students at developmentally appropriate levels.
So I want to first make sure Jeff Mealy, the health and PE coordinator, is on the call, so he can jump in on that as well. I'll just start by saying we went with a couple of our teachers to a virtual Shape America, that's the national organization for health and PE teachers, virtual conference this year. And one of the conversations that really stuck with me is relevant to the question that you just asked. Teachers were saying, everyone's always talking about social emotional learning now. We invented that. We did that first. We always do that in our health classes, and we're doing that with COVID too. So I know that Jeff's on the call now. I want to go ahead and let him add anything he wants to that, but that's the mindset that we're hearing from our teachers.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Yeah, mental and emotional health is an instructional unit in each grade level. We also want to get those benefits from physical education as well. So one of the, I guess, byproducts of this pandemic, a positive byproduct, is that this shift that phys ed is about sport and competition to it being about physical literacy for the benefit of health and wellness. So that shift has been great, I think, for kids. It has been a shift in instructional strategies for teachers, but they've embraced it, and I see that going forward, keeping that as the focus of both programs. That we really want to develop students that have the skills and the functional knowledge and the confidence, right, to be physically active for a lifetime, and also make those health enhancing decisions for themselves and for others.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that, one, yes, it's been a through line in health and physical education, but even ramped up even more now because of COVID. Just wanting to hear a little bit more or understand more, maybe not in this moment, maybe at a later date, of how that will be incorporated as a through line, especially as we have students who may be entering the classroom for multiple days a week for the first time this coming school year. We're coming back every single day, but also taking into context what has been happening in society for our Black and Brown students who were most heavily impacted by COVID-19. Like, I really want to stress that point too. Like, it's not just focusing on health and physical education is great as a through line. We need an extra layer because of the students that we're serving to ensure that we're focusing on this through a culturally responsive lens as well. And I'm sure there are, and I know I was definitely one of those teachers that, because of my identity, I incorporated that into my lessons, but making it a thing that has to be a part of the way that we address the learning of our students for health and phys ed, I think would be an important piece. Yeah. Thank you both so much for answering my questions. That's all for me.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I know that Commissioner Sykes is present, and I certainly want to highlight his perspective, but I also know that we have a few more things to do. So Commissioner Sykes is going to place his questions in the chat, and hopefully you all, I'm sure that you all will be able to give him some responses and engage in dialogue with him that way. I do want to, and I'm going to send some questions also. I know that we saw something there about professional learning and coaching. As I talk to teachers, and I was just speaking to Commissioner Roberts about this last weekend, coaching has to be a big part of moving curriculum. And so I'd like to hear more about that, not now, but later I'm going to send that so that we can perhaps have another conversation about our focus and our prioritization around coaching through the curriculum. That's all. But I appreciate the presentation. It was very graphically appealing, and it really helped to solidify our learning. But please look out for Commissioner Sykes's questions. And I certainly am going to come to Commissioner Sykes right after this Wholeness presentation, because I want to make sure that his voice is loud with this next presentation. So can we queue up the Wholeness presentation? Thank you all for this science update.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Yep, the screen is still, I don't know if it's me, but the screen is still with the science update.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
It's uploading. It's 39 slides, so it's coming. Give me 1 second. Can everyone see our screen?
Yes, perfect.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. So good afternoon, Commissioners and Chiefs and members of the public. I am Sarah Warren. I'm the Executive Director for the Office of Whole Child Services and Support, and I'm thrilled to be here with my leadership team today. We will be presenting a brief overview of our office and then heading straight into some highlights of our updates from this year. And we will leave time for question and answers. So we'll move right along. I'm joined by my leadership team, this amazing and dynamic group of women, but please remember that behind this group, there are at least 120 other staff members that are helping to make this work in the background, as well as our colleagues across the district, because this work of student wholeness and supporting the whole child is an effort that we have to undertake together. So just as a quick recap of the way that our work and the buckets that our work encompasses. So first of all, we're focused on creating safe, welcoming, and joyful learning environments for our students. We also know that in order for our students to be whole, we have to be intentional about supporting their social, emotional, and physical health and well-being. with a heavy emphasis on building strong relationships and making sure that we're providing support to adults as well, so that adults have the opportunity to do their own reflection and build the skills that they need to show up for students every day. The third key bucket of work is around making sure that our students feel engaged and that they have opportunities for enrichment and to explore their own interests and passions as individuals. And the areas of our work that are cross-cutting are focus on equity, and then making sure that we're consistently working to partner and build leadership among our students, families, and community partners. And this is how it sort of shakes out in terms of the way our office is structured. You'll hear from Katia Stokes, and she has many different areas of work that fall into our student wholeness bucket. And then Lori Hines leading the Office of Student Conduct and Attendance, the Home and Hospital Office led by Dr. Fink. And then within my office, we house the athletics team, which has a mighty 3-person team, and then extracurricular and engagement initiatives led by Danny Byerson, who will also provide an update today. The thing that I want to just note as we dive into the updates is this has been a really hard year for everybody involved, not least of all our students, our teachers, school leaders, and other staff. But I think that when it comes to this work around the whole child, we have really tried to embrace this as an opportunity. And we have seen a lot of interest in issues related to student wholeness, and people really starting to pay closer attention to what we need to do in order to provide that kind of support to our young people. And so we have really worked hard to rise to the occasion this year, and I'm hoping that you will hear that as we get into these updates. I'm going to turn it over to Katia Stokes for the summary of student wholeness.
Thank you, Dr. Warren, and good afternoon. I am Katia Stokes, the Director of Student Wholeness. If I had to sum up the year of the student wholeness work, I would capture it with this one quote: changes call for innovation, and innovation leads to progress. COVID-19 and the many associated changes simultaneously introduced new stressors and removed comforting connections and routines in the lives of children and adults alike. Concerned about the toll all of this would have on the social emotional well-being of our teachers, students, and staff, we quickly expanded our reach this school year to extend beyond the intensive learning site schools. This year was the hallmark of many firsts as we expanded our reach district-wide. Much of our district-wide work focused on creating spaces and opportunities for students, families, and staff to process their emotions, learn practices and strategies to better cope with stresses, and identify ways to develop meaningful connections with others while physically distant. A few of our hallmarks are listed here on the slide. I will just highlight a few. We partnered with the Office of Communication and Community Engagement to lead 2 town halls for families, providing strategies on creating an emotionally supportive learning environment in the home and tips for self-care practices for caregivers. In the fall of the year, we provided 5 healing circles for principals and 5 healing circles for staff. These were sacred spaces for school leaders and staff to focus on adult SEL and healing practices. I am happy to highlight that the Caring for the Leaders Circle and the We Care check-in models have been a sought-out model by others in our Castle districts. Next slide, please. We continue to provide teachers at all grade bands with the well-received weekly wholeness activities under the theme of caring, connection, and community. The wholeness activities are homegrown, which allows for us to provide activities that are relevant and speak to the current student experience. The wholeness activities focus on the development of SEL through practices such as mindfulness, gratitude journals, movement exercises, and of course, proactive circles. I think a testimony from one of our principals and students can best capture the experience and the impact of the wholeness activities. Principal Hill at Lackham and Bundy states, each morning I have a video introducing our SEL competency, and during the day, teachers implement the students' wholeness lessons that are connected to the competencies. Students enjoy the videos and parents are engaged with the discussions when they hear the lessons with their child. The activities help our students, staff, and parents start the day with a positive attitude and mindset. And one third grader added, I like it because it's fun and makes me feel calm. SEL is one of my favorite parts of the day. Next slide, please. We continue to provide support to the intensive learning site schools. We adapted the Wholeness Room model to focus more on providing support in the classrooms as opposed to providing support in a separate space. As you can imagine, our younger students experienced a little difficulty with navigating through different lanes. Adjusting to the virtual space and managing time was not only a struggle for students, but adults alike. Providing coaching support to school leaders and core teams was challenging initially, with many leaders reporting concern about how to reasonably embed the sessions without overwhelming themselves or staff. We adapted the coaching support that's traditionally offered to RP champions and SEL core teams. We expanded it to all staff to focus more on leading and modeling proactive circles, providing prompts for schools to use with students to engage in circles, and creating a PLC-style session under the cross-cohort collaborative that allow for staff at intensive learning site schools to come together to not only hear and learn about best practices, but really to practice implementation of one strategy per month. You can see on the slide the participation number for our offerings. Next slide. We were able to start the Strategic Climate Initiative this year. We fully staffed the team with a coordinator and 3 coaches. The 13 schools under this initiative developed school climate plans focused on the following areas: nurturing relationships, positive discipline, routines and procedures, classroom consistency, and adult-student interactions. Since December, coaches have been meeting with climate teams virtually at least once a week. And since March, we have been providing bi-weekly PD sessions to climate teams, covering topics such as adult SEL and school joy, a focus on student-centered celebrations. Next slide. I wanted to particularly highlight the model of support that was provided to schools this year that we really hope to expand next year. We anchored the work this year in the retreats, which were offered twice a year, and they were centered around the reopening phases. During the retreat, schools had an opportunity to engage in shared visioning and planning on identified areas in the climate plans. We also were able to highlight best practices from city schools around systems and structures that contribute to a healthy, joyful, and welcoming environment. This is followed by direct coaching, support, and professional development specifically aligned to what's in the school climate plan. And then embedded in this practice is the opportunity to engage in continuous learning process, which not only focus on data-driven conversations, but we really truly engage in reflective, courageous conversations to provide feedback on how plans have led to changes in practices, mindsets, and school policies. Next slide. Hopefully you feel just as excited as I do about the support we have provided this school year. If you have not had a chance to personally experience our wholeness work or wholeness activities, I invite you to check out a recent news story featuring Moravia Park, one of our intensive learning site schools. These are 2 segments that highlight how the school has continued to have a prioritized focus on social emotional learning and community building in the midst of the pandemic. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Tiffany Bird.
Good afternoon. Tiffany Bird, coordinator of Interscholastic Athletics. The pandemic definitely forced us to shift and resulted in the cancellation of our fall and winter season. We also needed to reimagine athletics and how we could re-engage our student athletes, and we did that through a virtual engagement period where we asked coaches to focus on 4 major pillars, but we really wanted them to just reconnect with their students. They focused on academic excellence and character, the knowledge of sport. They also focused on celebrating students and then their commitment to professional development. We were very eager to get back into a traditional setting, and we were able to do that, starting our spring practices on March 15th with competitions to follow in April, and even gave schools a voluntary opportunity to engage with out-of-season conditioning starting in April as well. On the very first day of practice, I received this text message. The coach said my kids were extremely excited to get back out there. The smiles were endless until they had to run. But I responded, I needed to hear that. This was the silver lining. He said, it's been really good for everyone to get back out on the field. I can tell they've missed it. They didn't even bat an eye when they had to rake the field. And I thanked him for that comment. One of our programs that you may not be as familiar with is our Unified Sports Program. This brings together students with and without disabilities in a fulfilling, inclusive experience. In a traditional year, we would offer tennis in the fall and indoor and outdoor bocce in the winter and the spring. But we were in partnership with the Special Olympics of Maryland. We were actually the first school system in the US to pilot this program. We had a 6-week virtual competition season and over 80 student athletes participated. We were very excited not only to pilot the program, we couldn't tell who had more enjoyment from it, if it was the stakeholders and the coaches that supported or the student athletes that were participating. At this time, Home and Hospital, Dr. Fink.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Louise Fink, and I'm the Director of Home and Hospital Health Services. This has been an incredibly challenging year for everyone, and I am proud to say that the home and hospital programs have responded to the challenge. A sound mind and a healthy body is the first ingredient for successful education, and we are so pleased that we can provide support to our students. Our expanded school behavioral health program has provided services through a collaborative program with Behavioral Health System Baltimore and 5 collaborating agencies to thousands of students, teachers, and families for the past 31 years. Through a Medicaid waiver, we were able to provide telemental health services for students over the entire summer. The numbers speak for themselves. Individual students, groups, over 10,000 sessions with teachers and family support, over 7,000 individual consultations. During the pandemic, the number of teacher consultations remains high, and there's an impressive number of student consultations. Next slide. And if we look at our statistics here, I know you've all looked at them, so I'm just going to tell you that the numbers speak for themselves. People are using these services with the individual teacher consultations, the family outreach, all the group prevention activities, and all our team meetings. We have served close to 10,000 students in our different facets, with over 7,000 individual students being served. Next slide. And I'm going to just share some of our comparison data here. I know I'm speaking with a group of people who know how to read data. Just wanted to show you our data over the last 2 years. And the next slide, please. And our data over our summer data. We are really very proud of the fact that our clinicians stepped up and really worked very hard with the students over the summer. And that was really thanks to the ability of involving telemental health. That was a Medicaid waiver that came up this summer. Next slide. Another service that we offer through this partnership is substance abuse partner services, and we involve substance abuse, early intervention and prevention in 15 city schools, and this is all part of our partnership and at no cost to city schools. Next slide. All our health suites are providing services in schools and supporting the implementation of our safe practices for COVID. Our 16 school-based health centers have reopened and are providing additional services for students. Dental services will be re-implemented in the fall. We are currently working on the design for the in-person dental services, since it's one of these services that has a lot of close contact. The vision program has resumed, and vision and hearing screenings are in process. Our other programs, Indian Education and Autism Waiver, have been making progress and doing virtual consultations and work with parents so that all the meetings and everything that needs to take place to make sure that our students get what they need to get are consistently happening. Next slide. Homeless services have been a big focus for our over 2,300 homeless students, and we have had ongoing services all year long. Our highlights for the year include the fact that we have hired a new bilingual liaison. We have provided both in-person tutoring and support in the shelters. We have reached out with computers and hotspots, providing in-person support and tutoring, distributing clothing vouchers, and a just added program, Souls for Souls, that's not up here, is going to provide 500 pairs of shoes for our students. We're very proud that we are able to get all kinds of agencies and people involved with us. Next slide, please. These are our key data points, and we're talking here about, we've given out backpacks, hotspots, all kinds of services to students, and that's what we've done for the remainder of this school year. Next slide. Home and hospital teacher has been focus of what this office started out to be. Hospital teachers were our first teachers who were really ready and voluntarily returned to in-person instruction. We had a number of homeschooling students, which was up to 2,100 at the beginning of the year, and right now it's down to 1,467. This is a number that dropped that we are proud of. It means that people are responding and being encouraged to return to in-school learning rather than staying home. We had 93 students with CHIP. We have programs for pregnant teens. We had 62 last year and 7 this year. One of the very small benefits of what's been happening this year is that because there has been so much online instruction available, students who may have had to stay home due to a pregnancy or a child care issue have been able to participate in the virtual learning in their schools. At this particular time, we have programs for parenting teams, and we're going to be working at expanding them for the next school year. Now let me pass it for extracurricular enrichment and engagement to Danny Byerson.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Danny Byerson, the Educational Specialist for Student Engagement and Extracurricular Activities. I'm going to take a brief moment to just highlight a few of the things that we have been working on over the last few months and go a little bit more in depth in certain areas. During this time, we've been able to partner with Outward Bound in a pilot effort that I will touch on more in a moment. Develop and post a virtual enrichment resource page for students and families on the City Schools District Learning site. We've also been able to partner with our colleagues in legal in the support of our LGBTQ+ students in the development of a student supports protocol, as well as in the recruitment and support of new and existing gender, sexuality, or GSAs across the district. We've also been able to support in the registration of over 450 youth for Councilman Zeke Cohen's 3-day Healing City Summit. We have been successful in planning and launching a career mentoring pilot program this spring, which I will touch on more in a moment. And lastly, we have actually begun the planning stages of bringing the world of esports or e-gaming to city schools as another 3E opportunity. So a little bit more on our Outward Bound pilot project. In our existing partnership with Outward Bound, we were able to provide a free virtual character development program to over 500 students within the district with existing and new middle school and high school partners. And in addition to that, Outward Bound with this program was able to provide professional learning opportunities to over 240 teachers, school leaders, and support staff. And last but certainly not least, in our partnership with the Office of College and Career Readiness, we have successfully launched the Future Ready Career Mentoring Pilot at 4 schools, those schools being Mervo, Dunbar, ACE, and Reginald F. Lewis. And just to give you a little context, the goal of the pilot has been to bring together Baltimore-based professionals and 9th grade students at each school to help those students explore potential college and career opportunities for the future, and of course, develop a meaningful mentor-mentee relationship. With that being said, I'm going to toss it over to Lori Hines.
Good afternoon, Lori Hines, the Director of Student Conduct and Attendance. This time, I'd just like to highlight a few of our initiatives that have come out of our office that we're very excited about. Let me preface this by saying that it has been our priority. Attendance has been our priority, and we really wanted to connect with families and with students to find out why they were disengaged and to create creative ways in which to engage them. And so this is just a picture of when we were out on one of our attendance bus visits in the neighborhood, and us just talking to actually some of the students that we saw during school time to find out why they weren't in school and what we needed to do to help to engage them. Next slide. So at the beginning of the year, we developed an attendance stat. And from that attendance stat, there were 5 different work streams, and you can see those different work streams represented here. And I must say that this was an awesome collaboration throughout various offices through district office to really come up with some creative, innovative ideas of how to get students re-engaged. So out of those efforts, there was a strong focus on re-engaging students across all of the work streams, excuse me. And so I'd just like to highlight a few of the activities that came out of us trying to re-engage students. So we began first by identifying students who were not engaged. We did that by, at that time, students were just attending school virtually. So we identified students who only had between 0 to 5 logins. We began making individual phone calls to those families. Through those phone calls, we were able to identify what some of the barriers were that families were experiencing and why students weren't attending. And then we were able to plan appropriate supports and resources to help meet the needs of those families and those students. We then moved to 6 to 10 logins. And from that, when we weren't able to reach families, we then moved to home visits. And so as you can see, at the end of March, we had completed over 1,694 home visits. We then began to plan for meetings at district office that they were escalated. When schools had exhausted all of their measures, they still could not re-engage students. We would have individual meetings with families at the district level office. What we began to find was that there were many students who were not engaged because of a lack of technology. So we redeployed our staff and we used the staff in our office to help actually hand deliver technology, meaning computers and hotspots, to families and to schools. At the end of March, we had delivered 400 devices to students and to families. We also had, we have an attendance bus run. And so our attendance bus actually goes to various neighborhoods. At the end of March, we had visited 14 different neighborhoods. On that attendance bus, there are several resources. So we have technology, hotspots, computers there. We have food and nutrition there. We have counselors there to help the students. So it really has been, like I said before, an awesome collaboration amongst the various offices to get out into the neighborhoods, like feet on, boots on ground, to go to the neighborhoods to provide these supports for these families. We also have an attendance hotline where families or community members, whomever, can call and get direct support with attendance issues as well. Next slide. In our branch of student conduct, we, most of those all of those specialists actually have been reprioritized to help with attendance because we have had so few suspensions this year. So at the end of March, we only had 5 suspensions for the entire school year, 4 of which were short-term suspension and 1 was an extended suspension. Previously, before COVID days, schools or administrators were able to just administer short-term suspensions, issue short-term suspensions to students, but any suspension that is given to a student in the virtual setting must first be approved by our office. And so again, we have only had 5 to date. We've also held multiple professional developments for administrators to help them apply the code of conduct, both in the virtual setting and in-person setting with special issues such as mask wearing and safety issues. And we had to rewrite guidance for in-person as well as virtual learning. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Warren so she can highlight a few things of what is to come in our office.
Great, thank you, Ms. Hines. I'm going to be very brief. I won't go into all of the details. You have them here, but I do just want to note that we are still pushing hard to get through the end of the year in a way that continues all of these supports, including constantly trying, as Ms. Hines just explained, continuously trying to re-engage students who haven't been attending much. It's never too late, is what we want to keep saying. And we're also getting ready for summer, and as you know, are now getting into full swing on the Reconnect, Restore part of our planning process for next year. So there's a lot of work going on there. And as I said earlier, I think I'm just really pleased that we've been able to sort of rise to the challenge this year. And I think we've also learned a lot through what we've done. We've heard a lot of great input from students and staff and families that have informed our planning and will continue to inform our planning going forward. I had a long call with a father today that was just incredibly helpful to me in grounding me and reminding me that for all of the great work that's happening, there's still a huge amount to be done. And we have a lot of students who are struggling with this experience that they've gone through in the past year. And so we know as we look to next year that we will really have to step up the supports even more and ensure that as students come back for full-time in-person learning and as staff step up to support them again, that we're there and ready with all the supports and resources necessary. Excuse me. So with that, I will turn it over to you for any questions you have.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the presentation. When we get these wholeness presentations from the team, they're always extremely robust, very substantive and thoughtful. And I know that one thing that I just want to highlight on was, yes, the work that everyone has lifted has been significant. And most people looking into the pandemic did not really didn't have a clue, but everyone wanted them to have answers, right? But no one, we had to figure it out as we went along. So I just want to shout out the team, everyone who was present from your team today, Dr. Warren, and all of the work that they do, and all of the work, quite honestly, that our community talks about coming out of this office, and it is being translated into our schools. Ms. Hines made a statement, you know, all boots are on the ground. Absolutely, all hands have to be on deck as we move forward in learning and taking care of our young people in our communities. To my board colleagues, I am not going to entertain any questions from anyone besides our student commissioner for this presentation for the sake of time. And I want to just encourage you all, if you have questions or some pressing comments, so please just send them in. But Commissioner Sykes, I'd love to hear from you and your thoughts on this presentation and any questions that you might have for Dr. Warren and her team.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you. This was an immense amount of helpful and positive information. And I think that my questions that I do have is leaning towards the future. Because as we see our plans to begin to to welcome our students and our staff members back into the building, one of my main questions is related to how are we reflecting and taking what we've learned from the pandemic and from this past school year and in the end of the last school year. What are the information we're taking from them? How are we taking what worked and what didn't work, and having those discussions with our staff members, you know, our principals, administrators, our students, our parents, our teachers, to see what worked and what didn't work, to begin to move us towards reopening and welcoming our students back and how we can really support them. And honestly, this is just a general question, and I think this is a question that I want, and I can actually send this question in, but I like this question for, you know, really just a general question for all of the directors of, you know, each department, to see what worked and what didn't work and how we plan to move forward. And also, I think my second question would be really related to wholeness, student wholeness, and I think towards the attendance and conduct part. I'm curious to know how we leaning the attendance, in the conduct department. How are we leaning on the wholeness department to give some supports to where it can be used? Because I believe that that this year a lot of some of the things that's going on is just we're mentally stressed out from this year. These things have been really, you know, sitting on our shoulders and we're stressed. So how are we leaning on these, you know, on each other to prepare to come back and to support our students?
So,
Yes.
Ms. Hines, I'm just going to give a really quick response to both of those, and then I think we should probably provide a more detailed follow-up in writing. So just very quickly, I want to appreciate your question about what we've learned and how we're capturing and applying that. And I want to say that, first of all, there are certain things that we've already learned and we've been trying to apply them as we go. So just an example of that would be the wholeness activities that we started creating last year. And finding a lot of positive feedback from that. So the goal would be to keep creating those daily activities so that students can have access to that kind of experience every day, no matter what grade they're in. But we've also learned that they're not being used universally. So we need to do a lot more work to make sure that teachers understand that they're there and they know how to use them and they feel comfortable. We're also missing some opportunities to really integrate social emotional learning into academics. So you know, there are things that we already know and will be working on. The other example that comes to mind right off the top of my head is teletherapy. A lot of students benefited from being able to access mental health services via teletherapy, not having to do an in-person session. And so if there is a way that we can do that, allowing, you know, funders and whatnot allowing it, then we would keep trying to do that. So those are some of the things we've already learned. And then I know there will be a lot more information coming before this committee and the board as a whole around the broader planning process. And there is a whole big community engagement effort around that. And then the other question with regard to the attendance work, we use attendance really as almost an indicator of lots of other aspects of student engagement and student well-being. And so we recognize attendance as being a cross-cutting issue that ties to student wholeness, ties to lots of things. How are families doing? How are students doing? And so we approach it from that holistic point of view. And our goal when we see a student that is struggling with attendance is really to dig down to the root causes of that attendance issue and work with that individual student and family to address the issue. There are lots of things we can do at the district and the school level that are more systemic, but when it comes down to it with the student that's really not very engaged, we've got to get down and provide those supports and problem solve together to address the individual issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, we're happy to provide more, thoughts in writing if that would be helpful.
Yes, I'm sorry, I did just want to add one thing. It was very, very important that we not make assumptions when we were trying to identify and to address the barriers with family. And so that's why it was very important for us to connect directly with families to hear from them what their barriers were, instead of us just sitting back making assumptions around why students weren't attending. And in my presentation, I would like to invite all of you, the board. On the last Saturday in April, we held an open house, a re-engagement open house for high school families. And on Sunday, the 16th of May, we will have another engagement open house for those families of K to 8. And so you will get to see with your own eyes the great collaboration that happens with all of our offices. It's at district offices, in the parking lot. It's a fair. We had a wonderful time. We even had students that we connected with that had not been to school who caught Ubers there to get their devices, their computers, their hotspots. We had, boxed lunches. We had counselors there ready and willing to work with the families to create a plan. And as Dr. Warren said, it is not too late. We want to get them re-engaged at whatever cost, whatever we have to do to get them re-engaged.
I appreciate that. All hands are on deck, as we just keep saying. And can you all make sure that the board gets that information, the actual invite that you're talking about, Ms. Hines, so that we can make sure that there is representation there from the board? That would be helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to the team for the work, and we certainly look forward to continuing this dialogue as we continue to engage as partners. Thank you all. We are now ready for the summer 2021 plan, updated presentation to the committee. And I do know that we have some items for procurement, but we also do not have anyone signed up for public comment. I do just want to, while they're preparing that presentation, I just want to also recognize former school board commissioner Buzzy Hedelman, who's with us, interested in this summer 2021 plan. And so just like staff is very focused on this, so many members of our community are focused on how we engage our young people, how we reconnect, how we reimagine, and how we move forward as a system, as a district for our young people and families. So I believe we're starting with Dr. Dabrowski.
That is correct. Good afternoon, Commissioner McFadden. Thank you so much. So yes, we're thrilled to be here this afternoon to share the updates we are working on for our summer 2021 learning opportunities for students. So go ahead to the next slide, please. So our agenda this afternoon is to really connect the summer 2021 with the broader recovery planning that you've heard mentioned in the other presentations this afternoon. We're going to share with you the planning process and the guiding principles that we're using to inform our work, and then we will have an opportunity to review the district offerings that are in place for this summer. Next slide, please. So let me just frame this before handing it off to Dr. Ohanian. So as has been mentioned earlier, we have just begun engaging around a larger, broader recovery plan that we are calling Reconnect, Restore, and Reimagine. We're calling it our 3 Rs, or R3. And as we think about this recovery landscape, we are now thinking about it in multiple phases. And the first phase of this work begins with our summer 2021. And we have to be mindful that as we're thinking about recovery, that there isn't a silver bullet, there isn't a 3-week program that will quote unquote fix what our children have endured. And I think it's very important that we just heard from Wholeness, where we've learned about the many challenges our young people have faced and how we as adults in our community need to circle around them to support them in a multi-year approach to recovery. And so I am wanting to just frame that as we think about the summer opportunities that we're going to hear about. Next slide, please. So in just a moment, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Ohanian. And I think as she talks about the process, I think one of the things that has been challenging, right, and there have been so many things that have been challenging for us this year, is how to plan for a program several months as guidance keeps shifting about in-person learning versus virtual learning, the health and safety parameters for in-person offerings, which we know many of our students need, have been challenging to plan for in the uncertain space of COVID. We are hopeful and excited that we will have more in-person learning opportunities. And those opportunities we really want for our children to come to and attend to. And we recognize, though, that we have many families who still are opting to remain virtual. So there's this complexity that we're planning for. We are going to offer the seats and have the safety protocols in place. And yet we know that we will have some families that will still want to remain virtual. So I say that to say that as we've been working on our plans, they continue to evolve. We are becoming very innovative in how we think about matching the social, emotional, mental health needs with the academic recovery needs. We are resisting this idea that we want to bring students in for hardcore academics that are all day long in a space that's virtual, because we know that for many students, that will not be something that helps them to recover. So as we go about thinking about summer 2021, we want to be balanced in our approach and thoughtful and mindful about matching students with what they're needing right now. So I'll stop there and hand it to Dr. Laura Ohanian, who has been working with her team, and I will be happy to engage in questions at the end as well.
Thank you, Dr. Dabrowski. So I just want to begin by introducing Rhonda Welsh, who is the coordinator of summer learning. I'll probably go through the PowerPoints for the purposes of time so that there's time for questions. But Rhonda will be here. She'll be here to answer questions. I also really want to acknowledge, as Dr. Dabrowski noted, this is a team effort. You know, we've been working with Janice Lane, our executive director, Josh Bailey, Matt Griffin on our team have all been working very hard. I'll talk about Lori Lynn Sutton and Crystal Francis, who are working really hard on specialized programs around this, and our ESY partners, Dr. Brooks and Donna Bushrod. So I just want to be clear that this really is a team effort, and I have the privilege with Dr. Dabrowski of presenting it. So I'm excited to tell you all about it. So as we know about the research with summer, that summer is a time where the socioeconomic gaps form, and summer is able to mitigate that gap formation, right? And so we know that from the summer research, and that's really important as we enter in, you know, this recovery efforts from the pandemic. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And I was really excited by Commissioner Sykes' question, who said he'll ask this question of all the directors, but we have a very extensive summer evaluation process that was presented to the board. So we go through a cycle each year of evaluation, and based on that evaluation, adjustment to programming for the next following school year. So you have access to that evaluation that was already provided. We also this year brought together an advisory committee of teachers, principals, district staff, and school staff, along with serving staff and families, to try to work together to identify principles, priorities, and programming recommendations. We are also meeting as a cross-functional group. Like I said, this is a huge effort. We have representation from every office that meets every week to make sure we're identifying potential challenges, identifying opportunities, and making summer as successful as possible. Go on to the next slide. Our guiding principles were to focus on more opportunities for social emotional learning. Dr. Warren already mentioned this. I'll talk a little bit as we go through academic recovery and enrichment. We're ensuring academic recovery and engagement, and we're prioritizing, and we're ensuring that's prioritized by partners, programs, and schools. We want to be really thoughtful about our continuum of learners. Those are some of the most impacted students based on the pandemic. So we're excited, to be having offerings, and I'll talk a little bit about that as I go. We've optimized in-person options and continue to offer virtual and hybrid. I think Dr. Dabrowski already did a really great job of talking about this, right? We want as many in-person opportunities, but we want to make sure parents are comfortable and we have choices. We're focused on student success for the following year. We're focused on learning that prioritizes content. We want educators with a proven track record to work with our students. And we want to be intentional about all of our practices to ensure equity and access for all. Go to the next slide. So our priorities are that SEL is foundational to all programs. We've worked with Katia. She's been a great partner, and she will continue to be a partner in helping us plan for the summer. We want to ensure that relationships between adults and students are emphasized. This is an opportunity for everyone to be excited about learning again. This has been a very hard year and a half. And quite frankly, I think summer is a great kickoff to next school year. And I want people to think about it that way and people to be excited about being in school again, including the students and the teachers. We want students, and I think Dr. Dabrowski already talked about this, to match student profiles with the right kind of programming. And we've looked at all of our programming. We've expanded, we've reimagined, and we've offered new programming that we've never offered before. So we'll go to the next slide. So what's different? That's a question I keep getting, right? So first, big exciting difference is we've gone from 9,000 to 16,000 seats. I think that's the first time in a decade we've ever passed 9,000 seats as a district offering. We have a longer program window from June 28th to August 6th, so 6 weeks. SEL is foundational. The engagement and relationships are key. We are layering in, and very carefully and thoughtfully, this will be part of future updates, hopefully, academic tutoring that is focused and intensive. We're expanding partnerships and looking for new partnerships. We just have released a PQS that we're continuing to evaluate those partnerships. We're offering multiple modalities. We already covered that. We have expanded and enhanced staffing, and we're really focused on our professional development. We've brought in one of our great teachers, Jamila Fort, to help us design programming that teachers will be responsive to and excited about, and have some of our best teachers providing the professional development for our students, for our schools and our partners. And then prioritized enrollment. We're partnering with schools and communities to make sure that we are doing that matching process. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Go to the next slide. So we have universal programming for all learners. This is personalized learning opportunities for all students. These are online, independent, and I'll talk about them in a second. We also, which is the 16,000 seats I mentioned, have a variety of specialized in-person, virtual, and hybrid programs that provide enrichment, intervention, and acceleration. Within a subset of those programs, we also have focused and aligned academic tutoring for students. And so I'll sort of describe that as we go through. Go to the next slide. So you see here that, as we said, in addition to the in-person and hybrid and virtual summer programs, the district is offering online, independent, self-paced learning or personalized learning that students can access from anywhere. And we're providing both guidance to both schools and families. We're working on that right now to say, what is best for me to do? If I'm a 6th grade ELA student who needs some intervention, some focus time, I go onto iReady online, right? But if I'm a 9th grader who wants ELA support, I would go to Achieve 3000. So it gives you, we'll be providing that, and it'll also come up on Clever for them so that it prioritizes for students. Go to the next slide. We are really focused on access for all, especially amongst our continuum of learners. We are providing that support in the form of support staff in programs for our English learners and our learners with disabilities, professional development for all summer staff on how they support the continuum of learners, and specialized programming for our gifted learners, our learners with disabilities, and our English learners. Go to the next slide, please. So with our families and communities, the goal is to assist our families and communities with resources to ensure all learners can identify the program and support that will best support them this summer. So that includes, right, universal resources. It includes outreach, open houses, professional development for schools so that they can support families and identifying the best options and matching them with programs. I'm going to go to the next slide. We are also, right here, thank you. We are also working very hard to identify, as Dr. Dabrowski mentioned, we really need to have a good sense of what programs will be in person because of all the health and safety parameters. Plus, we want to be able to provide them professional development. So beyond the district offering, schools are planning their own programs. Right now, we have a survey out. We have about 100 schools that are planning programming themselves. We will continue to partner with them to coordinate, provide guidance, provide professional learning. We are also providing some school-based district-wide programming. So I want to, Lori Lynn Sutton has done an amazing job. She is going to be offering at 40 sites Springboard Collaborative, which includes 3 hours of daily literacy content, family engagement, and those students in the morning would be engaged in that, and in the afternoon would have an enrichment activity, just like Dr. Dabrowski designed. Just service up to 3,000 students. But, I'm going to keep going. I don't know if we can move to the next slide. All right, great. Another example of district programming that will be sort of school-based, that schools will be able to provide their students is Crystal Francis, our Director of Early Learning, is working to provide almost 1,000 rising pre-K and K students opportunities with their own teachers in their own schools for a play-based curriculum that is inclusive of SEL, literacy, foundational skills, and is a school-based program. So really exciting. And some of those might partner. So you might have both Springboard and this in your school. You might have the Young Audiences site and one of these at your school. There's a variety of them. Right, go to the next slide, please. Wonderful. I also think it's really important to understand that we are a part of the summer offerings. These are sort of our district offerings and our school-based offerings, but we also have community offerings. We are beginning a partnership with the Funding Collaborative and Baltimore's Promise. As of right now, they have identified funding for over 11,000 students. Now, this is a little bit of a Venn diagram overlapping some of our school-based programming, some of our district programming, and we are in the process of relaunching a citywide summer systems coordination meeting that city schools will be sitting at the table for and helping this coordination. And as a part of that, we're going to take all of this programming, continue to map it, and really make sure that we're collectively identifying where there might be disparities in access and opportunity for students, and then try to fill those gaps. I'm going to continue. So I'm going to go through now just the elementary, middle, and high school offerings. I'm going to try to be very quick. These are just quick updates, so I'm going to kind of slip through these and go right to the offerings. But our elementary program updates, we've expanded grade levels, and we've increased the number of seats quite significantly. So we'll go to the next slide. Our elementary programming, we have our CTY Emerging Scholars programs. Those are for current first or fifth graders. It'll be a virtual program for about 500 students. This is one of our specialized gifted programming for our talent development students. We have our Summer Arts and Learning Academy. This is going to be in person for over 2,000 students. I think it's really important to add that we're going to have focused tutoring for those students within the program, and there's a strong focus on SEL. So SEL has always been really good about that component, but we're going to be even more targeted. Summer Lit is a brand new program. It was previously what was referred to as Summer Reads. However, Summer Reads was a drop-in program, and this will not be that. This will be a 6-week program for 480 kids. It will be in person, and it will be literacy focused, and it will provide tutoring for those students and support. We have our Super Kids Camp. This is a partnership that we've always had Parks and People program, but this is a partnership we're having with them. We'll have about 400 first through fifth graders, and this is brand new for district-wide offering. I'm going to go to the next slide, please. So our middle programs, we're going to be, focus. We've completely redesigned our middle school academic recovery program. I'll talk about that in a minute. We have a partnership with Boodle for grades 3-8, and we've expanded that. We also, based on our evaluations, have expanded wherever possible some of our other programs that we found were successful based on that evaluation. So I'm going to keep going. So these are our elementary middle programs, and then I'll talk about our middle school programs. So for elementary middle, we have the Boodle, which will be in person for 80 students, 3rd through 8th grade. A new program we have is a virtual program, Cadence Learning NSSI. This is a virtual option for elementary and middle students. And what's amazing about this program is they're recruiting high functioning mentor teachers from all over the country who are providing lessons for our teachers here. And we're also trying to recruit some amazing teachers here too. So I think in the combination, it'll be some wonderful options, virtual options for students. We have Alvin Ailey Camp, which will continue. We're excited, it'll be in person. This is an amazing opportunity. It's a leadership opportunity for students. They have a strong SEL component. They have a really strong, body image component that helps our young men and women who are in the program really think about themselves and their development. So it's like in those middle grade years. So we're really excited about that. And then we're going to be partnering with Elevate to offer the Freedom Schools curriculum, which is the social justice curriculum, which is amazing, in person for 440 students. And that is, yay. No, I don't know who is clapping, but yay. All right, I'm going to keep going. For our middle school, we're expanding programming in our Ingenuity programs, especially for the students. I know we recently came to the board and talked about Ingenuity, and they've done this expansion to provide more Ingenuity seats to students. We want to ensure we're supporting those students so that they're successful in these new seats. So those students that we've been focused on and trying to recruit, we want to make sure we're supporting. Algebra access. So I don't know if you remember of Engineers of the Future. We're increasing this to 2 sites. This is a algebra readiness program for students who may not have algebra in their school or need additional support in algebra. We're really excited about it. We've increased the number of seats. We've added back our 6th and 7th grade, which last year we could only do our rising 8th graders. So we're really excited about this opportunity. The math department has done an amazing job designing this program. We have our middle grades academic recovery program in partnership with Project Numa. So in the mornings, we'll have our academic recovery, but in the afternoons, Project Numa, and I don't know if you know Project Numa, but they're this wonderful mentoring program. As of right now, they've been working with our they have Black male mentors who work with our Black boys, grades 4 through 8. They're going to focus on 6 through 8. They're going to add females to the component. They do a lot of amazing activities. So I'm going to talk about that. They do yoga with them. They do meditation. They do mentoring, partnerships with the police department. So we're very excited about that partnership and expanding that. We have the middle school English learner program. This will actually be incorporated. I'm sorry. So I have monthly that I'm sorry. We have the middle school English learner program, which will actually just be incorporated in the middle school instead of being separate in the academic recovery program. So those students will be included. We also will have Algebra 1 recovery for students who are in 8th grade who need that recovery for the Algebra 1, specialized for them, who've already finished that course. I'm going to go to the next slide. So for high school, I'll talk a little bit about the expansion with our EL high school. We're going to provide both in-person and virtual, and I'll talk about why in a second about that. We're partnering with schools to expand our CTE offerings, which will be, I think everyone will be excited about, and we're going to have a night school option that will be virtual. So we'll go to the next. All right, our English learner program, we're doing a major expansion of that, and that's actually going to be, we're going to have an English learner program for original credit for those students with interrupted schooling in every credit recovery site. So every credit recovery high school site will have that. Our high school credit recovery program, which will serve about 4,000 students, will be 2 sessions, so 2 3-week sessions. We have 2 programs that have the traditional hours of in the morning, and then we have 1 site that starts at 11. And then we will also have our Apex program, which is more of an evening program and virtual. And this is based on our learning from last summer. Last summer, we had to do everything through Apex credit recovery. And what we found was that worked really well for some kids. It was great. They could work, they could do whatever else they needed, and they loved it. It was really great for them. It was not great for all kids. That was very clear. And so we wanted to continue that option. And it was a great learning we had from as a result of the pandemic. And then we have our advanced placement summer program. We're expanding the number of AP opportunities, but it's going to be hybrid. Last year was actually kind of awesome for that because we were able to do college visits we've never been able to do before, to universities that we've never been able to visit before virtually. So we're going to continue doing some of that. So that was pretty exciting. Yay, more thumbs up. All right, let's keep going. So excited, and if Dr. Pfeiffer is here and wants to step in, please feel free. But we're excited about our partnership with CCR to continue to expand that. We've got our SAT prep program, which we found amazing success. The students that participated had more than 130 points increase in their SAT scores. So we're going to continue that. We have CTE programs. In the past, we've always had credit recovery programs for our core courses, but we're going to be able to offer them in the CTE courses. So it's great. We've not been able to do that before. We have a college prep program, which is a virtual program to support kids in their college application process. We have you can see all of them here. We have OSHA training. We're going to have, Alliance for Careers for Healthcare. So we've just been able to expand our offerings. Plus, what's really exciting is YouthWorks will be 85% virtual, but for the first time this year, we're able to partner YouthWorks with both our credit recovery, our Apex recovery, so students don't have to make a choice. They can do both. So they can be participating in these youth work opportunities, they can engage. And I gotta say that Jason Perkins Cohen and the staff at YouthWorks has been amazing partners. So we've always had our students in our AP program be able to do YouthWorks, but we're also going to be able to have some of our students in our credit recovery. We're piloting that this year to see how it works and to learn from it. I think that's it. All right, do you guys have any? So I think we're going to pause here for questions.
Certainly want to, thank you for that, Laura. I certainly want to toss back to Dr. Dabrowski first before we open up to the commissioners for any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner McFadden, and thank you, Dr. Hohanian. And I do want to just echo the collaboration that Laura mentioned in the presentation across multiple offices, multiple teams coming together on it. I think as we hope that folks were able to see, there are a lot of different offerings that we're putting forward to support our learners and to encourage students to come back and reconnect in person, while still recognizing there are students who need and want to stay virtual. So I hope that that was something. I think the other piece is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, is how does this link with what is to come in the fall and into next year? And I do want to say that as we are sort of watching the ever evolving guidance from CDC and the virus, and knowing that we are moving more and more towards vaccinations, we are excited to be offering next fall 5 days of in-person learning for our students coming back to school. And that's something that we really want to celebrate and plan for. And so as we offer these summer programs of students being able to come back to school, as Dr. Ohanian has said, and come back to a space and to reconnect with their peers, that is a really big part of our effort this summer, and having those spaces there. At the same time, though, we do recognize that we have students and families who will want a virtual option next year. So we're also thinking about how we do that work of virtual programming in a way that would be have a sense of manageability for our educators, because I think many of us know right now that the hybrid teaching and learning instruction is very challenging. It is very complex. And so we want to, as much as possible, reduce those situations so that if you are coming back for in-person, you're experiencing genuine in-person learning with an educator who's fully focused on in-person teaching. And if you are a family who needs to remain and wants your child to remain in a virtual space, that you will have a dedicated teacher for that as well. So we are working on that commitment, but it will look different than it has. And I think that's going to serve all of our students in better ways. So I just wanted to name that as how this all comes together and fits together as a multi-year space of bringing children back to school in person. And from that academic space, I just need to really say that we know for our youngest students, coming back into buildings for in-person learning is really the way we want to go. As much as possible, our young people benefit from in-person interaction, the opportunities for teachers to be close to that learning, to be able to provide guidance and just-in-time support, as much as the virtual has been a space that we've learned about and gotten much, much better at. It still can't replace that in-person human connection that our young students need. And in many cases, our adolescents need it too. So I just want to name that for all of us, that as we make these decisions about our students and families, that we are really in that space of coming along in this journey to coming back into buildings. I do want to just say, and Laura knows this as she's working at the summer school space, the work that City Schools has done to have safe protocols for coming into buildings, the surveillance testing that we're doing, the mitigation strategies, mask wearing, hand washing, all of those things. We continue to have a safe in-person learning experience, and we're excited to continue that as we plan forward.
I appreciate that, Dr. Dabrowski, and I'm going to open it up to commissioners. And I see that there are some folks that have raised their hands, but I want to be true to our sign-up process, be fair to that process, to give the commissioners an opportunity to digest this and to ask some questions that they have. But we also have procurement to go to tonight, in addition to our budget forum at 6 o'clock. So I'm going to call on Commissioner Griffin first. Commissioner Griffin, do you have any questions or thoughts? I'm going to ask commissioners to kind of limit them to one or two if we have them right now.
Hi, not at the moment. I'm still digesting the wonderfully robust presentation. And even when I read through it, I was still kind of just tossing things around in my head. I want to say thank you first, though, for all of the work that you all have done. It's clear that a lot of thought and a lot of planning, a lot of considerations have been taken into account, and a lot of voices have been taken into account for this plan. I'm going to go ahead and defer to my other colleagues, other commissioners, for their questions. If anything pops up, I'll send it over or put it in the chat.
Appreciate that. Commissioner Roberts.
Commissioner McFadden, I do not have any questions. I did just want to highlight, I think it was slide 9 where it spoke about expanded partnerships. I was really excited to see that, and thank you so much for coloring it in for me a bit more to show where the impact of those relationships align with other aspects of the district for meaningful outcome or meaningful engagements for our students. So much like my other colleagues, I am digesting a large part of this, but thank you so much to the collective team for your work around this.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Roberts and Commissioner Griffin. Commissioner Sykes?
Yes, I do actually have one question. And that question is related to, on slide 22, high school programmers updates. I'm curious to know, with our, and I'm sorry, it's incorrect, 22 and 23, when it's talking about APEX credit recovery, high school credit recovery, what are our plans for some of our 12th graders this year that are planning to graduate who might need those support? So what is the plan to make sure that they get those credit recoveries completed, or those high school classes, recovery classes completed, so they can graduate on time, and if not on time, by summertime?
I am so glad you asked that question, Commissioner Sykes. And Rhonda, if you want to jump in at any point, I'll start, and then you can feel free to jump in. But Commissioner Sykes, I should have said this, and so I apologize. We're prioritizing our seniors. We do every summer, but I should have said that when I was explaining this. And we have a 2-course limit because we found, based on our research, to your point, that kids are not successful in more than 2 courses, but we do waive that for seniors who could graduate. And we actually have a whole summer graduation process. It's very exciting. The kids have their own, ceremony. So it's a whole robust process to ensure that seniors who don't graduate and could in the summer have an opportunity to do that. We are focused on it, which is why we provide options both morning, later in the day, right? We know some of our kids prefer to go from 11 to 5. We found that site to be really popular, right? For a variety of reasons. Some of them work at night. Some of them just don't want to get up in the morning, right? They're just not. Sometimes our teenagers have different, sleep cycles. That's part of the research, right? So we have that. We also have our Apex Night School. So within all those options, if it's possible, we work with them to do it. We're also, what I didn't mention, so I'm glad you said it, is we're extending at every high school a counselor for 1 week to just focus on making sure those kids who could benefit and should benefit from summer are recruited and enrolled in our summer program. So thank you for asking that question, because it provided me an opportunity to provide more clarity. Rhonda, do you want to add anything to that, or do you feel like that? I don't.
Yeah, I would like to add something. I just want to highlight the fact that Forest Park is a dedicated senior site. The very nice thing about having 2 sessions during summer is that our seniors can take 2 courses during session 1, and then take another 2 courses during session 2, and hopefully with 4 courses to be recovered or to take for original credit in order to graduate during summer. That is one option that we have that is dedicated for that particular site. And again, we have counselors that are some of the best in the district dedicated to that site to support those students and make sure they're in the right classes and they get the courses they need.
Yeah, please, thank you so much for that question, because we did forget to say that. We were trying to move more quickly, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioner Sykes.
Thank you.
With that, I'm slightly, I need that to be illuminated. With the site at Forest Park being dedicated to seniors. Forest Park is a high school on the west side of the city. How are we considering accommodating students in varying places within our city, our seniors particularly, in varying places within our city for programming like that? Is Forest Park the only school that we're prioritizing in that way? It's not. Okay, so can you all just illuminate that?
I mean, that's our hope for them to go there, because it's specialized for them. But if they can't make it there, we'll work with them. But we're going to have specialized courses and stuff for them there. So we'll work with the seniors. We always do. It's always a priority for us to make sure they graduate.
I'm glad that you said that too. Now my question is, how are we communicating? And I probably ask this every time we get to this presentation in committee. But how are we now communicating all of what we're kind of hearing in this committee to our students, to our families? Because based on the numbers that we saw in the presentation, we're targeting a little over 20,000 students this summer. So how are we communicating these program options, these offerings in a timely way, but in a concise way that is digestible for families so that they understand this is where my student has an option to go this summer to recover or to learn or to have some extended opportunities this summer. So how are we doing that? And I'm also glad when you mentioned Project Numa, I'm so glad that we're bringing that.
I know, I'm so excited about them. They're amazing. I'm so excited about them. Okay. You know, we were both excited about Ailey, and that's amazing. And this is another exciting middle school opportunity. I remember, Commissioner Fan, how excited we were when we were able to expand that. If you go to slide 13, and Dr. Dabrowski, please, if you want to jump in on any of these, feel free. I don't want to jump in. Okay. One of the things we're doing, and it's different this year, Dr. Dabrowski and Chief Davis have really given me an opportunity to meet with principals regularly. I've already presented this information to them, and we're working really hard to, right now I'm in the process. I just don't want to because I said this is like an update in time, so I'm working on this to make it even more streamlined. But we're working to work with schools so they can have open houses with their kids and be able to help their kids identify the right program for them. Right? Because we believe that schools are the best way. Of course, we'll have district offerings that can do that. We'll have call center that will help with them with that. And, you know, we're happy to do that. You guys know we're happy to do that. But I do think a school knows their students better. And so we want to work with them. We're going to create materials for them so that they can communicate along with all the district communications we have traditionally done, so they can communicate that. We're also working really hard to ensure that student profiles match the recommendations. Like, what does this student need and what program is right for them? And how do we ensure with the tutoring, if that program has tutoring, that they're really getting what they need so that they're kickstarting their recovery process, they're excited about learning again, and they're engaged. We're also going to be providing professional development for schools. In that, we're hoping to make sure they understand the options so they understand. And again, I think this extending counselors, especially at the secondary level, is part of that. And we're working really hard on early and timely communication to schools about these prioritized opportunities, along with the opportunities they have, and balancing like sort of what's the best program for their kids.
Laura, so I don't want to cut you short, but I do want to just think about also, how are we engaging? It's a question that came up. How are we engaging our partners and our community organizations that we don't traditionally engage? What is our plan for that? And then also, I'm thinking about a strategy around attendance, right? We did a whole attendance, we did a tour throughout communities. So is that something that we're also considering for both summer learning and school in the fall? So those are two things. I know it's a lot, but if we can answer those quickly, because we got to get to procurement too.
I think the first one around the partners I can answer. I present with Dr. Dabrowski to Baltimore's promise with partners that are coming this presentation so that they understand the options. We're going to, and that begins that conversation along with that coordinated effort that the city and the mayor is going to be announcing and that we're going to be partnering with. So we're beginning that conversation. I think that's a great thing. I know Dr. Dabrowski, I don't want to speak for you, is planning to give updates as we get, because this is just a point in time update. That's something we can continue to update you on. I don't have an answer around the attendance. I'll take that one back right now. And I need to think about it because I haven't really, to be honest with you, I've thought about engagement, but I haven't thought about it in that way.
Yep. Because I just know that that was a strategy used to get more students back into our buildings and into learning, engaging them in learning. So if we're thinking about how we have learned from this past year, that perhaps could be a strategy perhaps that we use, if it's available and if it's thoughtful based on how the team works it out, that we could, make sure that we fill these programs with our students that need to be in them the most. And then finally, I think that was it. And also thinking about that partnership question, I was just thinking about Rec and Parks also, and how we engage them, because I know that we're expanding YouthWorks, but the majority of that program is going to be virtual. But it's just, how do we engage our partners in a way to be partners in all of what we do? So I think that's important. I appreciate this. And certainly I know that you're going to receive more questions and some feedback from other commissioners as we move ahead. But I appreciate you all bringing this to our committee because really it is a collaborative effort that has to be established between school board, between staff, between all of our community, so that we do what is right for our children. And to Ms. Hines' point earlier, not make assumptions, but really do what we know is right for our young people based on the feedback that we receive, based on all of the data that we're learning from. Now let's translate that into some action that really raises achievement and makes our communities better. So I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, commissioners.
Jessica, it's so good to see you. I know you're ready. You just popped right on up.
I am ready to go. I'm going to walk through each of the 7 items that are on the agenda very briefly, given that we're already at time, and please stop me for any questions you may have. So the first item on the agenda is an increase to a contract for supplemental instruction materials. The increase is for $270,000 annually, and the contract would go through June 30th, 2022. The next item on the agenda is a continuation of our contract with the Villa Maria School. That is a non-public school that we have a partnership with that provides seats to special education students. The next item is a contract increase for NCS Pearson. It is increasing the amount to be able to continue to purchase the Naglieri ability test that we've used for several years now. The next item on the agenda is with the Mayor's Office of Employment Development for the YouthWorks Summer Program. So this is a total contract amount of $172,800 for providing opportunities for students through June 28th, 2021 through August 6th, 2021. The next item on the agenda is a contract update and increased amount with a partner, the University of Virginia. This increases the amount of up to $837,494.28 and extends the contract through December 31st, 2021. This item is related to a specific grant, and this is an adjustment that is being made based on a shifting in the strategy of the grant between ourselves and the University of Virginia.
Now, Jessica, is someone able to just brief us on this very quickly? The majority of the board members that make up the current board did not approve this. So I know that there was a previous iteration of the school board that initiated this grant process. But is there someone that is able to just illuminate this for us very briefly? I know we have 2 other items. I don't think we have any questions on them. But just for this one, if we could just get a brief overview of what this particular grant is for.
I believe Ms. Holland is available. She would like to provide some context.
Sure. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Angela Holland. I'm currently the manager for Whole Child, but served in the role as project manager for Coping Power in the City grant, which is the grant that we're discussing. It was a $4.5 million grant, which was aimed at teaching students coping skills within 10 focal schools. And so while we were in those focal schools, we were able to get a 2-year no-cost extension. So with that 2-year no-cost extension, we needed to shift some of the responsibilities of the data collection data cleaning, data mine, all the updating to the University of Virginia, and they're the ones who are going to provide that throughout the life of the grant. So the money that's being shifted is from a grant that we were awarded. It's not money that came from like general funds or any type of other budget.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Of course.
The next item on the agenda is for amending a contract and increasing an amount for the Scribble software. This increases the total cost of the contract to $903,617.88 and includes an additional service of culling records because after review, it appears that that would be the most cost-effective strategy for the district when we're going through that digitization process. The last item on the agenda is the contract with the Mayor's Office of Employment Development for the Contract School Youth Opportunity Academy. This contract would run through June 30th, 2022.
Commissioner Sykes, I know you don't vote on these procurement items, but I'm just curious if you have any questions or thoughts on any of these items that we were just currently presented with. If you have some now, if you don't, it's okay. If you want to talk offline, we can certainly do that also. And if Ms. Wilson is available just for an offline discussion, because I think it's important for you to be aware of what is happening, even though you currently can't necessarily vote on those by law. I think it's important that you understand so that you can better communicate to students in general what the board is actually approving, the types of expenditures that the board is approving. So let me know.
Thank you. I actually don't have any questions, but I would definitely like that. I think it would be good for me and as well as my peers.
Absolutely. So you already know how we can hook that up. All right. So we will definitely be in touch. I appreciate everyone for staying over a few minutes today. Our next meeting is on June 1st, the first day of June 2021. And the items on the agenda are a special education update and an early learning update. Just want you all to know that I'm really looking forward to that update, by the way. And a social studies update. We're going to hear from all three of those teams that present, and I'm almost certain that they're led by the executive director, Janice Lane, and Dr. Dabrowski. I want to just remind the members of the public and folks within our community that are here. We had a really packed meeting today, so I just want you to know that it was not us pushing off, but we just wanted to make sure that our commissioners did their diligence in asking questions. But certainly, if you all have questions, please email them to schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us. And then, of course, you can sign up the Thursday before any committee meeting up till, I believe it is 5 p.m., right, Christian?
I was just about to jump in. Yeah, Monday at 5 p.m.
Yes, Monday at 5 p.m. So if you want to, and all of our committee meetings are open to the public, right? And we want to engage with our community members and committee this way. So just make sure that you sign up so that we can allot the time to actually engage with you and actually hear your concerns in our meetings. If there is nothing else from the committee members, do we have anything else? Besides the budget forum at 6. Have a good night. Thank you to all of the team members that presented, all of our staff, Dr. Dabrowski, Dr. Brooks, everyone that's been with us, Dr. Warren, appreciate you all. We're going to end this meeting so that we can prepare for our 6 o'clock budget forum. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.